Hi everyone, George here with Beyond the Test Tutoring. Today I want to talk about a question type that is new to the digital SAT that had not previously appeared on any old form of the SAT or the ACT. This is a question of a complex list. I like to call them the super list, where we have a list of items that isn't just a list of items, but the items themselves have descriptive elements that require the use of commas. And so to show a really simple example of that, I'm going to list off a really simple sentence here. Anna has lived in Buffalo, New York, Los Angeles, California, and Austin, Texas. Now, if you're familiar with how the US designates its city-states, city, comma, state, you'll recognize that this is actually only 3 locations. But if we're looking at it very quickly, it's difficult to tell if it's 3 locations or 6. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we separate the items in the list, which are 1, 2, and 3, from merely the commas that describe something about our list, or describe something about each item in the list. So New York is describing where Buffalo is, California is describing where Los Angeles is, Texas is describing where Austin is. And so when we have this situation where we have a list, but there are necessary commas within the list that describe the elements of the list, what we want to do is separate the actual elements of the list using semicolons instead. And so here, the 3 elements of the list would be Buffalo, New York, Los Angeles, California, and Austin, Texas. Now, there's a really, really important part to this, and that's this semicolon and. This is what we're going to use to spot these questions. If you see a semicolon and, this is always a complex list question. Why? Well, a semicolon in any other circumstance separates 2 independent clauses, which means it's equivalent to a period. And since we typically do not start sentences with the word and, that's usually used after a comma as a coordinating conjunction, we're really never going to see semicolon and in any other use case. And so that's a great way to spot that this is a type of question that we're dealing with. So let's take a look at a couple of SAT type examples here. We're going to start with a question here. To fund her passion project, the artist created a line of limited edition prints. Now, I made the first couple of these pretty simple by putting colons in them, so we already know there's going to be a list. Just lets us focus a little bit on the way that the item description setup is going to work here. 1 featuring something, a second a series of delicate botanical illustrations, and here's our telltale sign, semicolon and, a third, an abstract piece composed of bold geometric patterns. And now we should be able to see what's going on with the 2 elements of the list that are already in place. We have the item, and then we have a description of that item. Which is to say that we're probably going to have the same thing in the first element of the list. In fact, this already says a second, so there's kind of a clear indication that what we're missing is an element of the list. Okay? And because we have the semicolon and we see item description and item description, well, we could probably see that we're looking for item, comma, description, and then a semicolon right before a second. So actually, right away, we know that the answer is probably going to be C, because we're going to need that semicolon to separate the first element of the list and its description from the second element of the list and its description. And if we see here, a sprawling, fantastical cityscape, and then a description, that fits in absolutely perfectly there. And now this sentence would read, to fund her passion project, the artist created a line of limited edition prints, 1 featuring a sprawling, fantastical cityscape, and that 1 featuring is part of our element. Rendered in vibrant watercolors, that describes the first one, semicolon, the second element of the list, a second, and then a description of that, and a third, and then a description of that. And so this answer is going to be C, and we kind of got a bit of a giveaway in the semicolon that being the only answer with a semicolon right before it. Let's take a look at one that's slightly trickier. And again, I did use a colon here so we know that there's going to be a list. For her study on ocean ecosystems, the researcher collected samples from 3 distinct locations. Blank. A deep-sea hydrothermal event where unique heat-resistant organisms thrived, and here's our telltale semicolon and, which I will remind you will appear in every one of these question types. A kelp forest, a rich habitat for otters and other animals. So it sounds like the rich habitat for otters and other animals is describing our kelp forest. Okay. And it sounds like where unique heat-resistant organisms thrived is describing our deep-sea hydrothermal vent. And so, again, we know we're going to need a semicolon here because what's missing here is the first element of our list. So right away, we know that the answer can't be A or D. We know it's either B or C because we need that semicolon there. Now, we got to decide whether we need a semicolon here. Well, if I have a coral reef, that's one of the elements of my list. If I then have a description of it, I don't want the semicolon before that description. The whole premise here is that we're going to have item, comma, description, semicolon, item, comma, description, semicolon, and item, comma, description. And so this answer is also going to be C, because it's going to follow that pattern of item, comma, description, semicolon, item, comma, description, and semicolon, item, comma, description. It is worth noting that you don't actually need a description on every one of these for this to qualify. For instance, I could have gotten rid of this and nothing else would have changed because I still would have needed commas in the first 2 elements of the list, so we still need a semicolon. Obviously, if I get rid of all of the descriptions, then we could just use commas. If it just said a coral reef, a deep sea hydrothermal event, and a kelp forest, that would have been fine without any semicolons. But as long as I have at least one description, meaning something that needs to describe an element in the list but isn't itself one of the elements of the list, well, then we need the semicolons to make that distinction. I'm going to take a look at one other question here. And this one, I did not put a colon in, just to show you kind of what more of the questions on the actual test will look like. Very few of them have a colon leading into the list, so you have to spot the list anyway. The 3 finalists for the award were an architect, a leader in sustainable urban design, a graphic designer, somehow one of these, right? They all say kind of the same thing, and a software engineer whose work on open source projects has helped thousands of developers. And again, we have our semicolon and telling us that this is going to be a complex list. Now, in this case, we already have the semicolon, so we don't have that clue here at the end to eliminate any answers. But what we have here is the first element of our list, which is an architect, and then a description of the architect, a leader in sustainable urban design. And then if we look at all of our answer choices, we then have a graphic designer, and then a description of the graphic designer. And we do have the third element of our list, and a description of that third element as well. So we just need to follow the pattern. We already have the semicolon here, but we don't have one between the architect and the graphic designer. And so we know we're going to have to start this with a semicolon, and that tells us that the answer is going to be A. Okay. The graphic designer is the second element of our list, and then comma, a description. So if I fill that in here, I'm going to have a semicolon at the end that then leads into the third element of our list. I hope you found this video helpful. This is a question type that doesn't really get taught all that often because it has very specific use cases, but it is a prominent feature in every digital SAT at least once. And so if we can master this, that's guaranteed points and something we should be definitely doing. with confidence. It's easy to spot because of a semicolon and then all we have to do is follow that pattern of element of list, comma, description of the list, semicolon, next element, next description, and so forth. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.